Welcome back, episode 3, 3, 2, 1 Liftoff, with some guests. These are all leaders in the rocketry team. You want to introduce yourselves?
Me first? Yeah, I'm Joshua. I'm structure sub-team lead on the Sounding Rocket team.
I'm Landon. I'm the design and simulation sub-team lead.
I'm Carson. I am the chief engineer of the Sounding Rocket capstone team.
Sweet. So, when did you all get interested, or how did you get interested in rocketry?
Carson, you take this one.
Oh, I can. I mean,
You get the whole.
it's not gonna all of us, but so this is a very goofy story. So it goes back to the good old year of 2012 when young little me saw a video on YouTube.com of Scott Manley playing Kerbal Space Program. I think everybody goes through those phases, and they're little being in the your dinosaur phase, your space phase, your whatever phase, your fighter jet phase. I don't know. Everyone has all your train phase. That's a good one, important one. Anyway, so I was kind of in my space phase. This is around the time the shuttle was doing its last flights, and so I saw this video, really cool little video game, and you can do it yourself. And I'm that's pretty cool. And so it was the first game I think I ever convinced my parents to buy for me was Kerbal Space Program. It was the beta too. It's I forget if it was a Kickstarter. It was an early access thing where it was really weird to buy it on their website, and I think my dad thought it was a scam. But anyway, that was really cool. And then I don't know, just growing up with that. And then in 2018, that was when SpaceX did I've been following it kind of loosely for a while, but 2018 is when SpaceX did their Falcon Heavy test flight, and that was a really cool big hype event. Whoa. But I remember watching that and being this is what I'm gonna do. That's really cool. So that's kind of my story. How?
Kind of similar for me. Just grew up really thinking space stuff was cool. Remember watching this shuttle launches on TV. I remember watching the last one at I was at daycare or something. It was pretty cool. We came in from we were I don't know, playing outside or something. We're watching on TV. I was dang, that's the last one. It's pretty cool though. And then I don't know, I just always thought NASA was pretty neat, looking at the history and stuff. So that's why I got interested.
Yeah, I think we all kind of had an experience like Carson at some point. I remember playing Kerbal for the first time at the ripe age of maybe 13 or 14, pirating it off of somewhere and probably got a virus in the process.
Bros out there.
Yeah. But yeah, just grew up being generally interested in space. I had a dad that was super into, what's the cutting edge with science and what's going on recently, and he was following all that stuff, and I kind of got into it by proxy, but just ended up being super interested in it as well.
Have you all been part of the club teams before Capstone as well?
Yes, all three of us have.
Yeah.
So I guess you want to talk a little bit about that. I joined my, I guess technically my freshman year. So this is fall 2022.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of people know similar things like this, but in the wake of COVID, a lot of the club teams were kind of destroyed essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very interesting situation where they had a senior class, obviously, of 5 or 6 people who were pretty heavily involved, but a lot of them, I think that last year were very into their big threes and senior design stuff. So the one person who really had kind of coordinating everything who still had experience was Patrick Williams, who's a grad student here now, but kind of interesting. We had a lot of very inexperienced people, and then Patrick Williams trying to corral us into building things that actually work, which is pretty fun experience. But yeah, that's kind of how I got involved.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to
Yeah, I started out going to the formula meetings on their aero team, just because I thought the carbon fiber and composite stuff was cool, and it's just easier to get started on a team that has more people,
Yeah.
But then that was in the fall semester, and then in the spring I bought my they were basically making homemade level 1 kits from Josh Anderson.
Yep.
Out
The
of
Anderson
Boston.
Special.
Yeah, the Anderson Special. Great rocket. It flew flew very straight, and it was like half the price of the stuff you could buy online. So, got my L1 for pretty cheap that semester. Well, I built it that semester and then flew it during the summer, I think is what I ended up doing. And then just kind of like fully like was doing rocketry like from then on. That fall semester that Carson came in, we like tried to do some like bigger projects. I don't know, we had like probably like 10 people. I'd say like 10 people that actually came to the meetings sometimes. But yeah, it was just kind of Patrick for a while there. So, but we definitely have a lot more people now and a lot more people that are involved more. So that's
especially with the senior team. It's like,
yeah,
because it's kind of a situation where obviously like for the capstone, like it's our senior design, so we're like in charge of like, you know, all of the like major points, but we're kind of like roping in where we can, like making sure that the club is like getting experience from that. So like when we're doing like, I don't know, example of like lines, when we're trying new stuff out, like making sure that that knowledge is getting passed on to the club, but also like documenting all of our propulsion development and our like design development stuff, so that like in the future, like follow up senior designs, but also like the club team will have like our experience to be able to build off of. So it's kind of like, I guess y'all are very distinctly separate from like any kind of like established organization. Like the Speedfest teams are kind of just like the Speedfest teams, but we're kind of in a place where we're kind of like working a little bit closer with like the established student org, which is interesting. Yeah.
You mentioned like level 1. Kind of walk me through that if I have no idea what.
Yeah,
what
so
that
basically you start out, Carson can help with this too, but below, so rocket motors are classified by their impulse, which is they start with A and go all the way to like P, and every letter you double the impulse. So I mean, think about an O motor is going to be way bigger than like a C. It's like all the way. It's like H is like the first L1 motor, so level 1. So anything below H, like you can just go buy from Hobby Lobby or online, like right now.
Estes rockets.
Yeah, it's like some like Estes sized
bigger
rockets.
animal.
Yeah,
There's some smaller Aerotech ones, like
Yeah,
mid-power stuff.
there are some. Yeah, that's technically like low power and mid power. But then if you want to go to quote unquote high power, which is HI and higher, you to get to your level 1, you basically have to build a rocket that you fly and successfully recover in quote unquote reflyable condition.
That's an important one.
Yeah, it has to, it's like if you break your fin off when you land, that's not reflyable. So you'd have to build it stronger and test again. But once you have your L1, you can buy as many motors as you want in that category. So H and I, and then get your L2, you can do JKL, and then the biggest one is level 3. You can do
M and up.
M and higher. So
Yeah, I think the max size they sell is going to be an O motor, but
yeah, the biggest size you can buy is an O.
yeah.
O6000, right? Or in it,
I think I forget because it's
the one they just came out with that's like $10,000.
Yeah, the big boy.
And you have to like drive to Utah to pick it up. So
That's interesting.
and then you can like make your own motors too. Like some schools have made like what was the USC?
Yeah, they did like a Q motor. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But those kind of like go outside.
Yeah, it's like
So all this stuff that we're working in, like the levels on that system, it's run through. There's 2 like nonprofit organizations. It's NAR, so National Association of Rocketry, and then Tripoli Rocketry Association, and they basically like overlap very similarly. They have like very similar like safety rules and stuff, and they both like co-sponsor kind of that leveling system. And it's kind of like an unofficial, like it's not like legally bound in any way. It's very similar in operation, I guess, to like the way the FCC regulates like ham radio. So if you know about like ham radio licensing, it's kind of a very similar thing to that process, with the caveat that it's run by these like governmental organizations, and all of the regulation is done through like the motor manufacturers. So like there's technically like not like a legal thing going on. It's just like a motor manufacturer that's licensed by either of these 2, or I guess not licensed, but like approved to launch at either like Tripoli or NAR flight fields, will not sell these motors to anyone who doesn't have proof that they have like achieved that certification or like in good standing. But essentially like the way that process works is you like just join either NAR or Tripoli. I think both of them are like for students, it's like a pretty cheap, like I think $20 to $30 a year membership, and then for like I think adult members, it's like between like $60 to $100. I forget. It kind of depends where you are as well. Like you might have like a regional like chapter fee you pay, but you get that, and then you're kind of like registered in their database, and you can start earning like the certifications, and then those feed into all the motor manufacturers you can buy from as well.
Yeah. So I guess it's not like technically by like law you have to have an L1 to fly an H class motor. It's just no one will sell you one without one.
And it's kind of like the whole effort there is to keep the hobby from getting like regulated. So like protecting access to these motors like through kind of like a, I guess it's I won't say unofficial, but like a self-enforced system of like kind of checks to ensure like the people who don't have the like proper experience and level of trust are getting their hands on these things, in an effort to like ensure that the hobby stays like free from like regulation and oversight, by like ensuring like bad stuff doesn't happen because of it. So it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about your capstone project now. 50 kilometers is the goal, right?
Yep.
Walk me through like how it's been like planning for that and designing.
I guess I can kind of speak to that. So the 50 kilometers it's like halfway to space, So to get there, there's like, unless you just have some like really long burning motors, which are really hard to design, I don't know. Trey could talk more about it, but
there's a lot of hoops involved with just like
it's
a lot of the stuff we're kind of working on this semester in terms of propulsion is kind of working up towards making those larger motors.
Yeah.
But like it's kind of like a trifecta of like actually getting the propellant to be able to like fire these things. So you have to develop that. Then the hardware. A lot of these larger motors, like you have to make your own hardware from scratch. Like when you start getting up there in size. And then the third one is like testing and like the approvals to like do like flights and then like ground testing like at the university. So there's like kind of the three big hoops there with like the large motors. But essentially,
so our design's like a two-stage design. So the first stage is using a commercial motor. It's 98 millimeters, so that's like about 4 inches, and it's like just over like 5 feet long. So I mean, think about that. That's a 4-inch diameter, 4 foot tall or 5 foot tall motor. It's pretty big. Like it's the O5500, which we've flown before on a different rocket to about like 30 or 26,000 feet, right?
Yeah, because it was designed for 30, but we flew it from a much lower altitude field, so only went to 26K. But
yeah, now it's for the Spaceport America Cup,
Yeah.
which is a different competition that the club has done before. And then so there's that first stage, and then on top of that stage is a 76 millimeter or about 3 inch diameter motor / rocket. There are commercial options for that, but we decided to buy a commercial basically motor casings, like from Loki Research. He basically makes like the best motor cases you can buy.
Yeah.
They're designed for like research, obviously, like it's in his name, so like the smaller ones are like snap ring, and it's like really nice because it's easy to like change them in and out. But this larger one is actually threaded like some of the other ones. But part of the reason we picked that case is to there's no commercial reload or commercial motor you can buy that will like fit in that case. Like if you
can't get propellant to
so like you
actually fly this motor, so you have to make it yourself.
So you'd have to make the propellant yourself to fly this big of a case, and it's nice because it's 3 inches, but it's also like over 5 feet long, as well. So it's like you can pack a lot of propellant in a small diameter, which is really how you get to like those higher altitudes. So we stack those on top of each other, and current designs with like maybe like more liberal or like unexpected, like smoother surface finishes than you'd think are getting closer to like 60 kilometers. And then if you lower that down to the surface finish you expect after some like ablating, because we're putting like an ablative coat on it because it's supposed to get like pretty hot at Mach 4 if you didn't know. So that likes to chip away at your surface finish, so you get less altitude. And I think that is lowering us down to like about like 54. So we are going a little bit higher than 50, but like the goal of the flight is not to just hit 50 exactly. It's to like test our materials, like our airframe, our ablative, our everything at those kinds of speeds and altitudes.
Yeah, the big goal, kind of tying back into like the knowledge transfer and like proving a lot of stuff with this rocket. Kind of the reason we chose like the 50-kilometer target, like halfway to space, is that it requires you to like design and build a vehicle that's going to utilize like all the same techniques as a vehicle that is going to like go all the way to space. But it kind of is like in terms of like budget. In terms of like a big one is like the propulsion stuff, because when you start like going full scale, you really need to be doing your own like full scale like O and like potentially like P and Q motors if you're doing like single stage especially. But it gives us like the ability to test a lot of this high performance like all these techniques like at a very high performance vehicle, and then like document that for like the future, like so eventually like, down the line when they're working on the full scale like 100-kilometer vehicle, they'll have all this data so if that didn't work for them to be able to like inform their decisions. So yeah.
I'm curious. If you have no idea because the simulation doesn't allow for it, but like, where do you expect to like break the sound barrier? Is it like further up?
Like
I think you're doing
Really?
it twice.
yeah, I think we're like well
we're trying to not drop all the way back.
What really so we are breaking the sound barrier like on the full booster sustainer stack up like pretty quickly. I don't know exactly, like
I remember being
it's definitely like within the first 4 seconds of flight, because that's how long our booster burn time is 4 seconds. So like
if I recall,
I think it gets up to like Mach 1.8 or something with the
Yeah.
full stack. So probably about like 2 or 3 seconds in is, I'm guessing, when it. I'd have to look at the sim, but and then after that, our sustainer. So this is something that may change, but right now we have it basically coasting unpowered for 10 seconds before we light the second stage. And part of that is if you light it too fast, you're going to be going like really fast in a lower atmosphere, so like you're going to get less altitude gains and basically more stress on your airframe. But if you wait too long, then you have the chance that your rocket's going to start going like this, or it's going to angle over.
doing some Dr. Arena shenanigans.
Yeah, it's going to
Some
be a
rigid body
freaking
stuff.
Yeah.
rigid body. So we're trying to keep it as vertical as possible. It's less stress on the airframe, and you go higher as well. So, and if you're going too fast sideways at your apogee, like you have too much horizontal velocity, when you deploy your parachute, it's going to be like, we're supposed to be moving at 0, but we're moving at like 500 feet per second sideways.
I mean,
I'm
interestingly,
going to rip the
though,
parachute off. Like,
I mean, we'll be so high up though.
it'll be
like-
really high up. The
There'll be,
drag
like,
the
no-
drag force will be like minimal.
Yeah,
so like
I think the main consideration
that's
is
that's kind of a bigger problem on
Yeah,
like
recovery.
lower altitude rockets. But
Yeah.
It'd be more of like where you gotta find them.
yeah, and if it's like
Right.
flying like 1,000 feet per second sideways, like that's a lot of
That's a lot.
that
of,
really increases your radius
Yeah,
of landing.
restrictions,
So
yeah.
we want to keep it as vertical as we can, really.
Yeah.
But as far as like, I think the altitude that we break from the graph, I think it was like 5,000, 6,000 feet on
Yeah,
the way up. So
I have my laptop if we really want to look at it.
bust
But,
out the numbers.
but yeah, our second stage also right now with the 10 seconds, we're basically dropping to just at Mach 1 and then lighting again. So we're not dropping below the sound barrier again, which if you waited longer, you probably would go higher, but then you got to go through the whole Mach part again, and that's kind of more stress on your frame once again. And that would just push us to an even higher altitude in Mach than we really want to test on this flight, basically. So
Like if you really wanted to like squeeze as much performance out of the vehicle as possible, like
you'd
we
wait
could-
like 27 seconds or
like
something
there
crazy like that.
technically is a configuration I think with the 2 motors we'd be flying that you could get like all the way.
Yeah,
to
you could
space.
get, like,
if you
If you really like min-maxed this design, you could get to space with these 2 motors we have, but we're just not min-maxing it that crazy because that's not the
Structures team lost, design team won.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be really. So basically, a minimum diameter is like the carbon fiber tube is enveloping the whole motor case, and it's just one tube the whole way. While a sub-min is like you lose the tube around the motor case part, and you use the motor case like as part of your structural airframe. So you would just basically be flying an aluminum tube with like a tiny little carbon fiber part and a pointy end on top, and then that's your sub-min configuration. So that cuts down on your mass and your like frontal area, so you basically get a lot more performance out of them. But they're we've never built one as a club.
Mm.
Other people have. I mean, people have put like build threads on how to do it, but it's just we're not ready to take that step.
And also, a lot of them
do break.
A lot of them break.
Yeah, a lot of them break. So
Yeah.
it's a challenge for sure.
I think understandably so, but
Yeah.
y'all have anything?
My phone alarm.
Time to wake up.
Wake up.
Y'all have anything else to add with the capstone? Like any breakthroughs you're ready to share, or if not, that's fine. And
We
We're
don't
gonna have
have
some
any.
cool stuff in the next few weeks. but
Yeah, we don't have any competitors, so we can.
Oh, true. Yeah, because we just win.
Yeah,
right?
we don't have to keep our secrets from anyone. There's definitely a lot of cool club firsts we've been knocking out.
Yeah.
Like they've been mentioning, Propulsion's been going ham on some motors, doing a lot of club firsts there. I think less than a year ago is when we started making motors through the club. Right?
Like actually, officially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's a huge step for I think college rocketry teams, because it's really hard to find a space on campus that you can like safely store and board the propellant. And so that's a huge step forward for the club. We've done a ton with structural manufacturing.
Yeah,
kind
this
of-
guy
yeah.
talking about there's a lot of
We've
a lot of
been-
recent stuff that they've been doing
Yeah.
with our filament mining that's been very exciting. Going to be super cool for just like the future of like rocketry growth in the state. That's another thing. Like, tying back in propulsion, like at Oklahoma State, I think we have like an extremely solid like rocketry like program here. Like it's kind of crazy. We've got the commercial stuff through OAir that we do occasionally. We've got like obviously the club that does competitions, and then now the capstone that's doing like some really cool like breakthrough, like I say breakthrough. People have done stuff like this before, obviously, but just
breakthrough for us.
breakthrough, like
It's
very
for us.
cool. Like this is not easy stuff to do in terms of like senior design. And one of the big things that we do, that, and again, not to like start beef with like other universities. There's plenty of universities that like have the experience in terms of like developing stuff like liquid rockets, like hybrid rockets, even like solid rockets, which is stuff that's like in the pipeline here at Oklahoma State. A lot of like stuff with that is happening in like research, but we are like part of the kind of like upper cohort of like colleges that are flying stuff. Like we were like we went to Spaceport this last summer. We competed in like the highest end, the 30,000 foot.
kilometers. Dude.
Yeah,
We're going to the moon?
give a few more years for that one. But 30,000 foot category, which is like, of all the teams that are out there, it's like 160 teams. I think only like 30 or 40 of them are competing in that category there, which just like, it's very exciting to see like the scope of like the magnitude of vehicles that we are building and flying here, and like you see a lot of cool stuff from the universities, but the like thing I'm excited about is like in the future we're gonna be able to combine like flight like vehicles with like the like liquid and hybrid, and I mean we've already got the solid stuff like going like ham on it. So I think the future here of rocketry at Oklahoma State is gonna be extremely exciting. I'm gonna definitely stay tuned into it after I graduate, because I want to see all the cool stuff they pull off. So.
Sad to be graduating. It's such an exciting time.
Yeah.
It's like,
Just like
it's getting good.
Because I would
I'm
not be
happy.
surprised like within like I think the current goal is like next year we're gonna try to follow this capstone up with like the space shop, but it could turn out that like we like don't hit all the goals that we're aiming for, and like we might want to do like a repeat of some of our stuff. Fingers crossed everything goes well and we just like pave like right on through to knock on wood. But I would not be surprised if you see a rocket from Oklahoma State that reaches space within like the next like few years. So very, very excited to be able to be part of a like institution that's like making that possible. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think that's a good spot to end. Unless you have crazy stories, or Adam, you want to chime in?
I really don't have anything.
I can't really think of anything.
I mean,
insane.
there's a lot. So with rocketry, there's a ton. I mean, I've got a ton of crazy stories. It's just like stuff that would be like fair to talk about.
I don't
I
want to
guess-
throw anyone under the bus here or
Yeah,
expose anyone.
I think the most like interesting like in terms of like a vehicle like failure we've had like as recently would be the caddy incident last year
my
at Argonia.
gosh.
Yeah.
So this was the Argonia Cup. I guess if you want to talk about this, I mean, because like
Yeah.
this is all of our stuff, so we were directly.
So yeah, how many
But-
times did we like test fly?
I think
that
we
rocket?
flew
I
it-
think we flew like 3 times.
It flew 3 times before
And then on the actual day of the competition, It's like perfect
Yeah,
upwards,
perfect ascent.
perfect upwards part of the flight.
Yeah,
Then the
sustainer
second
lights, which is
stage, so it's
yeah.
another 2-stage rocket.
And another big thing, I guess coming back to our like experience at university, we do 2-stage rockets. Like we've done them for a few years now, with like I'd say a relatively high degree of success. But that's another like very hard challenge for a lot of universities to be able to pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
But a big part of the Agonia Cup like is the 2-stage design requirement.
And the golf balls.
And the golf balls. But so we had a vehicle we developed last year called Caddy that we as Landon
Carried like
mentioned,
over 100 golf balls.
I think it was 131.
131 golf balls in the upper stage.
Yeah. So big ol' like tube section just filled to the brim with golf
Like
balls.
literally just dumping them in there.
And we'd flown I think a successful. So we did like 2 test flights, and then we had a previous prior competition flight where I think it was like the tilt lockout or sustainer didn't light because we just weren't within bounds. I forget exactly.
It's either that or something with the igniter, I think.
Yeah.
But basically, then at the end of the day, it lit the second stage. Perfect descent, looks good. Arcing over. We don't see a parachute come out. But then halfway, then when it gets to about 2,000 feet, when the main parachute's supposed to come out,
goes at 9,000 feet, and then we're looking at our telemetry. And we see the recovery devices, like it says they deploy them, right? Like it says it just like
so like
it thinks
the rocket
should
thinks
be
the
broken
parachute
open,
is open,
but it's coming down and it is not slowing down. So we have the way the rockets work typically is they'll have 2 parachutes. They'll have a drogue where the rocket kind of splits open
at the
down
apogee,
the middle,
at the max
apogee.
height.
And that basically keeps the rocket from coming back in ballistic. Because if you come back in ballistic, you're gonna have a bad day. And we have the main parachute, which deploys at like 1,500 feet or so, which is like the big boy that will keep it like from hitting the ground and breaking everything, because it's still going like 100 feet per second under a drogue typically, or maybe a little bit slower than that. But essentially, it goes up to apogee. Drogue should be coming out right now, and it's not.
The drogue tried to come out, and then it's pointed down at the ground, and then it hits 1,500 feet. It's like, all right, deploy the main. Nose cone pops off, and then we just see a massive parachute with like. It's like basically not falling at all because the only thing hooked to it is a nose cone. Because the rest of the rocket just broke the shot cord and he's buried like 10 feet under the ground in this farmer's field. There's like 100 golf balls.
We got some of them out.
Yeah.
It was, oh my god, just such a crazy story. So
it was funny.
At apogee, obviously the charges, I think we after the fact, like, there was more resistance, and this is kind of like a big deal with like rocketry is you don't want to ever rush things, because when you rush things, bad stuff happens. It was near the end of the day, and the weather for the next day was looking like terrible. Like I don't think anyone got to fly again the next day, so we kind of in a bit of a rush to get the vehicle together for a second flight. And I think what ended up happening is like it must have been like a wire part of the shock cord that we were like trying to force together. That just added extra friction. So we think like at apogee it kind of had cammed together. So instead of like a smooth like pull out, it kind of pulled diagonally and then bit into the fiberglass and then like locked it in. But essentially, on the way down, because the computers are still operating, they're just like wondering why they're going faster than normal.
Yeah.
But they detect the apogee or the altitude, where the main deployment should occur, which pops the nose cone off, so that comes off successfully. But the vehicle is, I think it hit like Mach 1.5 on the way up or something, like very fast. And it hit that Mach coming back down. So your Mach like 1.5 or something, 1.6, nose cone pops off, and then the shock cord, like the parachute comes out like with it, and the shock cord just like, it's a like pretty thick piece of Kevlar. It just gets ripped right off, right? Because the nose cone tumbles around and then becomes a parachute, and then this cord just yanks while the inertia of the rest of the rocket's coming down. But the really interesting thing is that the rocket, like still together, no longer has like a nose cone. So it's like scooping all this air at a very high Mach number, or not very high, but like high Mach, like past supersonic. And so the acceleration on the vehicle, because we got some of the telemetry on the vehicle like up to hit the ground. So the acceleration of the vehicle after the nose cone came off was greater than the acceleration on the initial like boost and sustained motor lights. So like this vehicle, like once the nose cone comes off, because we're lucky, we actually were able to, we have like most of the vehicle. I think the payload tube we were able to recover, but we got the nose cone back. We got like the avionics bay back, and I think that I don't like we want to fly those computers again, but we got the computers back. But
the last data point we got from the computers was like negative 700 feet per second at like 200 feet above the ground, and that's usually not conducive to a good flight.
But essentially, it could have been a lot worse. Like, it's usually when a vehicle comes like in ballistic like that, like you are getting like a fine mist. But we got like the vehicle was identifiable. I think the motor, like when it hit the ground, like the force like launched the motor like out through the retainment system, and it was just sitting on the side like in the field next to like the rest of the rocket. So you're able to get like the body tube out, but the payload tube with the golf balls, like that was the section like that got forward exposed after the nose cone came off, and that thing is like still. I think I've got it marked on my phone in a GPS coordinate.
If you brought a shovel, you could probably dig it out.
Yeah.
But it was too deep.
And there was also another fun story there with the because the payload tube broke in two when it hit the ground, because there's like a forward bulkhead that holds the golf balls in. But when it hit the ground, that forward bulkhead like sheared off and stayed near the surface, and the rest of the tube without a forward head on it just like impacted into the surface. But what that means is there's a single golf ball that had been like pinned against like one of the forward eye bolt on that bulkhead when it ripped off. So there was a single golf ball from the front end of the payload tube that just like got pulled out and like was up near the surface with that bulkhead that got saved. Like, I thought it was really funny that like there was a few dozen golf balls spilled out like where it had impacted, but for the most part they were all just like in the ground, like never like, I mean you could get them out, but it was like you'd need probably like a lot of people and a lot of time. So, but one golf ball from the forward section got pulled out by that bulkhead and survived. So, very funny story there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Caddy's a very near and dear to my heart rocket, because man, we had that.
Dude, it's because we painted it. It's because we painted it. Every time you paint, never paint a rocket. Never paint your rockets, dude. I swear, every time you put time into painting it, something bad happens. Like in the next flight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sweet. Well, yeah. Thank you all for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us
Thank you.
on.
Thanks for having
This
us.
was fun. Very interesting. And may have to go to Kansas to take
Oh,
up
yeah.
some golf balls if I'm short.
True, yeah. For golf balls, they're
But
probably still. I mean, it's like in an actual. That's like a neat part about the Arkin, because these are like actual like fields that they do farming in. Like,
yeah.
it's kind of funny, like recovering, especially like during the grow season, in like one field to another, depending on which way the wind's blowing, is like a totally different experience. Like if the winds are going northeast and you land in the soybeans, like
Good
that
luck,
is a
dude.
totally different experience of recovery than if you land in like one of the fallowed fields, or if you land in like the corn. Like I think it's a really funny thing you have to consider is like watching your rocket go up, like knowing the way the winds are blowing, and like, okay, I'm probably recovering this thing in soybeans. So like all the extra considerations you have to make for like going out there, making sure you got your long
they
pants
close
and
down
boots.
during the summer for wheat harvest,
Mhm.
so you can't launch during a couple months during the summer. So
Yeah.
But basically, what I'm saying is you probably would have to like dig around a little bit to find those golf balls. I'm sure they've been plowed over at this point.
yeah.
So maybe if you get a little scoop of golf ball in your next like order of soybeans from the store, maybe that was us. So
Don't know who else it would be, but
I mean, there were a bunch of other rockets.
There was a
that
bunch of other rockets that also crashed
very
with golf balls.
In
Yeah,
terms of
that's
again, this is like I felt comfortable talking about Caddy because like that's our rocket that we worked on, like the whole team worked on. But there were definitely a lot of other way more spectacular failures
gosh.
just at that year's event as well. But yeah,
Dude.
tons and tons of stories. If you want a hobby where you will have a lot of stories to talk about, rocketry is a very, very good one to go for. A lot of exciting stuff happens. Oh yeah. Nothing quite like hearing the sonic boom of a rocket coming back down. Things have gone. Oh yeah. But yeah.
Sweet.
Alrighty.
yeah. Well, I think that's episode 3. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us on.
EP3.